Well, it is time once again for some Bleach Soul Resonance, and today I want to talk about some expectations going into the next few months of Bleach Soul Resonance. Not so much just like going over like a plain overview of all this information which we already have, but sort of stopping on a few bullet points here and there and talking about some things that you might want to be prepared for. So, main body of this video is going to probably be dedicated to this Grimmjow announcement, which I think is sort of interesting because we know that at least one of them, the base Grimmjow in this case, is going to be gifted for free after release as a separate unit, right? So that's like, it's one of those things where I wonder if they're going to keep him strike and sort of have like a, hey, if you like the limited character, if you like the free-to-play Grimmjow who is strike, maybe you want an even better one, which is going to be Pantera, and is limited, right? But I don't think that's the case. It means that I think he's going to be a different typing, which should alter how you plan around the next few months of the game, and what I mean by that. So here we have our lineup of actual, free-to-play, quote-unquote, standard banner SSR characters. And we've got a Slash, Tactic, a Strike DPS, which to me, X marks the spot, X out Yoruichi is a possibility, so I don't think base Grimmjow will be a Strike DPS. We've got a Thrust Tactics character, we've got a Slash support, we've got a Thrust DPS, and we've got a Strike Tactics character. To me, it feels like if you're going to put Grimmjow in the game as a base SSR, then maybe you go with Slash, because Slash does not have a free-to-play standard SSR unit, right? So the most you had if you did not pull on Bankai Ichigo was the Ichigo Kurosaki Shikai form, which was probably the best, free-to-play option for players who didn't want to reroll, right? Didn't want to reroll, didn't want to pull. So I think this makes sense because as far as Spirit goes, we should be getting another Spirit unit, and I just don't think that Grimmjow aligns well enough with the framework of Spirit to even be fudged as a Spirit character. Could they just do it? I mean, what do these types really even mean outside of just being colors, right? There is some coherency, but we do see with characters like Gin, like Aizen, like Yoruichi, like Nelel, that there is at least some attempt to abide by these things. But if they were going to abide by them then forever, then, every Quincy coming would be a Thrust character or something like that, right? Which is not realistic. I mean, outside of, like, the dude who's literally like a pro wrestler, right? It just doesn't make sense for them to stick so far in the binary, though we do know they're at least operating within this binary to some degree. So that takes me to a previous post that we saw once upon a time, which was this data mine update by the Bleach SR France page, who went ahead and listed who was right and who was wrong. This has been around for a while, so I don't feel like scared about showing it or anything, and nor do I feel like, nor do I feel like this is like going against the spirit of them being like, hey, don't talk about leaks, because we've just known about this. Isn't new, we've known about this forever. So Kenpachi was right, Gin was right, Rangiku was right, Toshido, Momo, and Aizen were right. We now know that Mayuri was wrong, he will be a Thrust support, and we now know that Seifon is most likely correct and will be a Strike Tactics character, right? These things we know to be true. These truths we hold to be self-evident, right? Grimmjow, base Grimmjow, actually is right over here as a Thrust, probably DPS character, which is interesting. Now, Thrust doesn't really have any more room to fit a character on. Slash kind of does in the case of getting a Tactics character, but I don't think base Grimmjow is ever going to be a Tactics character. You could glean from this, though, that at least in this top portion, we sort of went left to right as far as like DPS, Tactics. DPS support, Tactic, DPS support, But then it sort of shifts off with Seifon being leading the charge with Tactics support. Unless you would want to say support or Tactics support and then maybe support again. This doesn't make sense, right? So it sort of breaks the chain there. It makes me wonder what Grimmjow plans to be, because I think that obviously they were going to make Base Grimmjow a transforming DPS character. He's a DPS character, most likely for Half-Anni. That's going to be Strike, and they just had to split him up. I don't think any of those plans changed. What I would like to see, though, is maybe concerning Grimmjow. If you're a free-to-play player, let's say you're a free-to-play player, you don't have Kenpachi, right? You're a free-to-play player, you don't have Kenpachi. So you need a slash DPS. If Grimmjow ends up being a free-to-play limited slash DPS, who we might, by the way, get free boundaries for, because we haven't yet confirmed how we're going to be getting these boundaries either. That's another thing. The free-to-play characters have to have access to their boundaries somehow. In the case of Rangiku, if you played during Gein's drop, you got an entire boundary 6 Rangiku for completely free, right? And that went as well for her weapon. Now, we know how good Rangiku is. If they even make him, like, I don't know what the percentage would be. If they make him 10% of the unit that Gein is or Kenpachi is, but you have access to 6 boundaries and he's an SSR, so he's playing with like SSR stats, we might be looking at the, you know, in theory, he'd be a 0.5, quote unquote. Like, let's say he's a 0.5 tier character. So we can go over to Giku's post again, who says, really happy they're doing this. This way people can get base and Pantera as they wanted. I wonder how good he will be, but time will tell. I could see him being a solid tier 0.5 unit. I don't see any problems with this. Better than just getting Pantera, right? So if he is a 0.5 unit, but you have, you know, all 6 dupes in him, I would look at him and be like, wow, do I start using him on my slash teams more than Kenpachi? Because I would say that 0.5 in the case of a whale means 0.5 when compared to characters with dupes. 0.5 duped in the case of a free-to-play player is gonna start looking more like having like a dupe 4 DPS that just reigns over, you know, your other SSRs, right? Like if he comes out and he's filling this slot right here, and like say he is still thrust, and we get him duped, if you're a free-to-play player and you missed Gein, or you have Gein but you didn't really get like, you know, multiple dupes in this guy, he might just be looking like a character who could just directly, flatly replace your Gein if you so want to, right? You don't have to, but it will depend on how we like get these dupes. We don't really have any confirmation outside of Rangiku's dupes being completely free to play, right? They're completely free so long as you play during the event period, right? It's interesting. Worst case scenario, I think, for the larger audience is, you know, I spent my standard tickets because I was like, well, I guess they're not updating the standard banner. They told us they weren't. If they drop him in the standard banner, I'd be like, you bitches. You bitches. Like, that's crazy. So we'll have to see. I guess what they could do is they could give us a bunch of the free-to-play standard tickets, and, you know, we could run it. Outside of that, though, I just wanted to briefly talk about the fact that we are getting, like, Jade in the form of content. Jade in the form of content is really good. So long as the content is fun, then you'd always rather have people actually doing the content to get their rewards, right? Exploration is going to be like whatever. His events is going to be like whatever. You know, week 2 and 3, you know, so on and so forth. These are the breakdowns. These are the break points of these, like, Jade, and that'll get us to, like, over 8,000, which is crazy. I mean, if I got over 8,000 Jade right now, I'd be at 16,000 Jade plus, right? That's a crazy amount. That's like that's a character. You know what I mean? Like, that's a character and a weapon if I'm not lucky. So it might look like I'm actually going to pull for Mayuri. You know, I'm more incentivized to pull for Mayuri, I will say, as someone who is making content for a game, able to produce content for a game, able to tell you how good this character is at B0, so on and so forth. So it would be kind of nice to maybe, you know, just knowing we've had at least 8,000 plus coming, not counting the pull, like the logins. It's tempting. It is very tempting. We have confirmation of that much, but yeah, this is all just in sort of like preparation, because like I said, we can go here now. We saw Giku is actually pretty spot on with, like, you know, tactics character here. We know this is a support here. We've got our strike tactics coming on April 3rd, and on April 24th we'll have a spirit character of some sort. Definitely plotting to be a DPS or a support character for sure. This would be a character I'm very interested in, especially if we see that it ends up being like a Shunsui or something. I think that the next like month is probably going to be the one you need to decide whether you want to skip or pull on. And then after that, you can just go pull, I think. Because we're going to be getting our first major celebration. Half-Annis and anniversaries of games always pump up the stones. I would be thinking that we got like over 10,000 stones, or jade rather, for half anniversary easily. For people who didn't pull Toshido's weapon, this is probably going to be a pretty landmark point for you if he doesn't end up being like, if the spirit character coming out doesn't end up being a support. Because right now, Toshido without his weapon, Toshido without dupes as well, for free-to-plays, is a step behind the other free-to-play options, especially if you can compare his output to like Geen. Even if I did have his weapon, if you compared his output to Geen, admittedly Geen just has a crazy team, right? An absolutely insane team, so it's hard to, you know, it's hard to talk down on the boy. I don't want to talk down on Toshido, because sometimes I feel like when I talk about like sort of regretting getting Toshido, people take it as Toshido's bad. That's not what I'm saying. Toshido is a good character. It's just he needs like love, right? He needs love. Like this dupe 2 is crazy, but he's a free-to-play player, or not free-to-play. He's a character with a good 2 dupes in him, so it's not like it's impossible to get him off the floor. His stamp is very good. His weapon is very good if you have it. It's just that he didn't come with his own set. He needs his weapon. And then Boundary 2 rather is about the cutoff point, I'd say, before you really get a lot out of him. And in that case, I mean, you've got Kenpachi, who on Boundary 1 and is just like a monster, right? Not even counting Boundary 2, which completely changes how you would gear him. So yeah, that's all I really want to talk about, is just the suspicion of a Grimmjow releasing and being very meaningful for accounts. Very meaningful accounts. I would think that the biggest news in the next few months is going to be how good this free-to-play Grimmjow is for people. And I don't expect him to be particularly bad. I expect him to be like really good. We have literally not gotten a bad SR character, and the SR characters I would call free-to-play friendly characters. So, I mean, I'm talking not after release. So Rangiku and Momo, right? They are insane. Rangiku especially is crazy. So I expect Base Grimmjow to release and be extremely dominant. I think they put a lot of work into him. I think he was literally going to be the character they released, and he was going to be, you know, split between himself and a transformation. I think they were planning for Grimmjow to be a landmark drop to generate a lot of money. And I think the idea that you can log in and get a free-to-play Base Grimmjow is like, hey, come play our game. It's like, that's like promotion. That's free promotion. It's like, hey, if you start playing Bleach Soul Resonance right now, you get free SSR Grimmjow. You know what I mean? So it is interesting. If you're wondering like, oh, should I skip this? Should I skip that? This upcoming free-to-play Grimmjow is going to be very interesting as far as getting an SSR is concerned, because I think it makes it more likely that you should find another skip. If we might just be getting another DPS unit who could be dominant, especially if his dupes are also free-to-play available, right? Because I don't know where they're going to put his dupes. I don't know where they could possibly put his dupes that seems reasonable. So I assume they'll be earned over time. And if that's the case, I mean, I think he's going to be very strong. I think he's going to be... I think for whales, it'll be like, oh yeah, he's right below B6 Aizen or B6 Kenpachi or B6 Geen. And for free-to-plays, it's going to be, yo, this is literally our best DPS character. I do suspect that could be a real thing. Right below being important for whales, and right above being like the top end of what a free-to-play player is able to easily acquire, since we don't have all of the resources. But yeah, that's a little talk down. I thought, I don't know, this Grimmjow character is definitely very interesting to me. I don't, the more I just look at him, the more I consider him with my eyes, I'm just like, are you gonna be crazy? Are you just gonna be absolutely insane? Who knows? I've been Lone though. Like if you like the video, subscribe to join the club. We will make it, and peace.